I came home from Korea to an empty driveway, and the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. The spot where my father's Navy staff car always sat was bare concrete. My wife didn't even look up. She said I sold it. My son needed 120 grand for his wedding. Get over it. For a beat, I just stood there with my carry-on in my hand, Iowa cold slipping in through the door behind me. Jet lag, grief, and that number all piled up in my chest at once. What did you say, Linda? She was at the kitchen counter in fuzzy socks, scrolling her phone like she was checking coupons. The room smelled faintly like vanilla creamer. She glanced up, annoyed. I sold it, she repeated. Eric needed the money. Deposits were due. You've been gone. I handled it. I could still taste airplane coffee and recycled cabin air. My suitcase wheels left 2 wet tracks on the tile by the door. On the coat rack hung Dad's old VFW windbreaker, the one I hadn't had the heart to move yet. Outside, a neighbor's pickup rumbled past, tires hissing on slush, and for a second I wanted to run after it, like a kid. Like maybe this was all a mistake, and the car would come back if I just looked hard enough. Gone, like my father was gone too, only he wasn't coming back. The Navy car, I said, keeping my voice low. Dad's car. It's a car, Bob, she snapped. Don't act like it's holy. Your dad's gone. You can't drive a memory. The words hit harder than the sale. I felt heat rush up my neck the same way it used to when a chief chewed me out on the deck. Back then I had noise and motion and a uniform to hide behind. Here it was just my kitchen and my wife looking at me like I was an inconvenience. Where did you sell it, I asked. Omaha, a dealership. They paid fair, she said, shrugging. 6 weeks until the wedding. Eric needed help. Be a man. Be a man. I didn't answer. If I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure what would come out. I walked past her and went straight to the garage. The overhead light buzzed when I flipped it on. The air was sharp with dust and cold rubber. Where the car should have been, there was a clean rectangle of bare floor and 2 darker stains where the tires used to rest. No engine tick cooling down. No brass Navy key tag clinking. Just emptiness. That's when the grief finally found me. My dad, Harold Kincaid. Harry, to everyone else, drove that staff car for 20 years. Dark blue paint so deep it looked black in winter. The trunk always had a folded flag, a pair of gloves, and a thermos that smelled like coffee, no matter how many times you washed it. When I was a kid in Sioux City, he'd take me to the VFW on Gordon Drive. I'd sit in the passenger seat and watch his hands on the wheel, big steady hands. He'd tap the dash twice before turning the key and say, "Listen, Bobby." That's what dependable sounds like. Last month after the church hall service and the casserole and the handshakes, I still hadn't cried. I'd done what men my age do. I'd held it in. That car was the one thing that made it feel like he might walk out of the house again, wiping snow off his boots, telling me I tracked it across his floor. Behind me, the door from the house swung open. Linda's footsteps clipped across the concrete. "Are you sulking in here now?" she asked. I turned. "You sold my father's car to pay for your son's wedding?" "Our son," she corrected, sharp as a slap. "No," I said. My voice surprised me, steady, controlled. "Eric is 28. He's not my son. He's your son, and he's old enough to pay for his own tux." Her face reddened. "You don't know what it's like to raise a kid alone?" "I know what it's like to work," I said. "I know what it's like to save, and I know what it's like to respect what isn't yours." She threw her hands up. "You're making this into some military honor thing." "It is an honor thing," I said, and my voice cracked. That car was his pride. It was his life. Linda's eyes rolled. "Bob, you're 56. Grow up. We needed the money. He needed the money. You'll get over it." Something in me clicked, quiet, cold, final. "I came home to bury my father," I said. "I didn't come home to be robbed." Her mouth opened, then shut. Her phone buzzed and she glanced down, and just like that, I wasn't even the main event anymore. "I'm going to the store," she said, turning away. "Try not to be dramatic when I get back." The door slammed. The garage went still. I stood there alone, staring at empty concrete, and I did the only thing I could do to keep from breaking. I pulled out my phone, opened my notes app, and typed one line. Omaha dealership. Find out everything. Because my father taught me this too. When someone takes what isn't theirs, you don't scream. You document, you breathe, and you handle it the right way. The house felt different after that. Not louder, quieter, like something important had been unplugged and nobody wanted to admit it. Linda didn't bring it up again that night. She cooked chicken breast without seasoning and talked about centerpieces and seating charts like we were planning a church picnic instead of a wedding that had just eaten my father's legacy. I nodded when I was supposed to and pushed food around my plate. The refrigerator hummed. The clock over the sink clicked forward second by second like it was keeping score. Later, when we went to bed, she turned her back to me and scrolled on her phone until the glow faded. I stared at the ceiling fan and counted rotations the way I used to count waves on night watch. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I made coffee the way my dad taught me, too strong, no nonsense. I drank it standing up by the window watching frost lift off the lawn. The driveway looked wrong, without the car like a smile missing a tooth. Linda came in tying her robe. "You're still on this," she said, not asking. "I'm thinking," I said. She scoffed. "You think too much when you've been gone. Over there, everyone jumps when you say jump. This is real life." "Real life," I repeated, "where you sell something that isn't yours." She leaned on the counter, arms crossed. "You were gone for months, Bob. Korea, then before that, St. Louis, then Des Moines. I handled the bills. I handled the house. Eric came to me panicking. A man helps his family." The word man again. She used it like a hammer. "I didn't authorize the sale," I said. "You didn't need to," she said. "It was in the garage, in our house." "That car was in probate," I said. "You knew that." She waved it off. "Paperwork, technicalities. You always hide behind paperwork." That one stung because it was almost true. Paperwork is how you keep things straight. It's how you keep your hands clean. Eric showed up that afternoon, all teeth and cologne, wearing a jacket that cost more than my first truck. He slapped my shoulder like we were buddies. "Hey, Bob, appreciate you," he said. "Wedding stuff is insane." I looked at him and tried to see a man who needed help instead of a grown kid who'd never learned the word enough. "You're welcome," I said evenly. He grinned, oblivious. "Mom said you were cool with it." Linda shot me a look that said, "Play along." I didn't. "Where did the money go?" I asked Eric. His grin faltered. Deposits. Venue. Band. You know how it is." "I do," I said. "You spend what you can't afford and hope someone else covers the rest." His jaw tightened. "I'm starting a new thing after the wedding. This is temporary." "Everything is temporary," I said, "including marriages built on other people's sacrifices." Linda snapped, "That's enough." Eric grabbed his coat. "I don't need this," he muttered and left without saying goodbye. When the door shut, Linda rounded on me. "You embarrassed him." "He embarrassed himself," I said, "and you embarrassed my father." She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe she didn't. That evening, I drove to the VFW post on Gordon Drive. The parking lot was half full the way it always is on a weekday. I could almost hear Dad's laugh before I even opened the door. Frank was at the bar nursing a light beer, his cap set just right. Retired Navy chief. Solid as they come. "Bob," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Sorry about Harry." "Thanks," I said. My throat tightened, saying Dad's name out loud. We sat. The room smelled like old wood and fryer oil. A TV murmured a weather report. "They sold his car," I said, not trusting myself to dress it up. Frank frowned. "Sold it." "My wife did," I said, "for her kid's wedding." Frank took a slow sip. "Harry wouldn't have liked that." "No," I said, "he wouldn't have." Frank set his bottle down. "Your old man was particular. Didn't leave things to chance." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" Frank shrugged. He used to say important things don't sit out where anyone can grab them. Man had a habit of keeping his ducks lined up. It wasn't much. Not a confession. Not a clue. But it was enough to plant a thought I couldn't shake. On the way home, my phone buzzed. A missed call. Omaha area code. I stared at it, at a red light, heart ticking up a notch. Omaha. The dealership. Linda's words echoed in my head, paperwork, technicalities. At home, Linda was packing invitation envelopes. "If this is about the car," she said without looking up, "I'm done discussing it." I didn't argue. I went to the garage and sat on an upturned bucket, hands clasped, breathing slow. I thought about Dad tapping the dash, about dependability, about keeping things right. When I checked my voicemail, the message was calm, professional. "Mr. Kincaid, this is Aaron from the dealership in Omaha. We recently took in a vehicle that belonged to your father. There's something he left inside. We'd like you to come in." I listened twice, then a third time. Inside the house, Linda laughed at something on TV. I turned the phone face down and stood up. For the first time since I landed, I felt something other than grief or anger. I felt direction. I didn't tell Linda about the voicemail, not right away. I let it sit in my pocket like a weight, like a compass needle pointing somewhere I wasn't sure I wanted to go. The next morning, Iowa woke up gray and flat, the kind of sky that presses down on your shoulders. I poured coffee into a travel mug and wrote a note on the counter. Back later, nothing else. Linda was still asleep, or pretending to be. When I started the truck, the radio crackled to life on an AM station, some farm report about soy prices and a high school basketball score. Familiar. Steady. I pulled onto the highway heading south, the tires humming a low, constant note that matched the pulse in my chest. Half an hour and my phone buzzed. Linda, did you cool off yet? I kept my eyes on the road. 10 minutes later. Linda, this drama is exhausting, Bob. Another buzz sharper. Linda, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I didn't reply. I drove. Cornfields slid by in long, winter brown rows. I thought about my father's hands on the wheel, the way he checked mirrors twice before changing lanes. I thought about Korea warehouse lights, shipping manifests, the discipline of doing things in order, because order keeps people safe. What if this was nothing? What if Linda was right and there was just an old receipt under the seat and a dealer trying to be polite? The doubt crept in, whispering that I was chasing a ghost because I didn't know what else to do with my grief. Another text popped up. Linda, Aaron already paid. You can't undo it. That name stopped me cold. Aaron. So she knew the dealership manager by name. She'd talked to him, negotiated, signed. I exhaled slowly and kept driving. Omaha rose out of the haze by late morning, overpasses, box stores, a tangle of exits. The dealership sat on the edge of town, a neat row of sedans gleaming under a pale sun. I parked my truck and sat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, feeling my heartbeat settle into something workable. Inside, the showroom smelled like tire rubber and lemon cleaner. A young man in a pressed shirt looked up from the desk. Mr. Kincaid, he asked. That's me. I'm Aaron, he said, offering his hand. His grip was firm, respectful. Thanks for coming in. He led me past glass offices to a service bay where the staff car sat under bright lights. Even stripped of plates and paperwork, I knew it instantly. Same deep blue, same small nick by the rear bumper from when Dad backed into a snowbank and laughed about it for weeks. Aaron opened the trunk and lifted the liner. Beneath it was a narrow panel I'd never noticed. He tapped it, then unscrewed it carefully. Your father asked us to call you if the car ever changed hands, Aaron said. Said you'd understand. Inside the compartment was a manila envelope, edges worn, and a small USB drive taped to it. My name was written across the front in my father's blocky handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were documents, trust papers, notarized, dated years back. Clear as day. The vehicle was placed in a trust. I was the sole beneficiary. It wasn't hers to sell, I said, the words landing heavy and true. Aaron nodded. That's why we stopped the transfer when our legal team reviewed it. There's more. He plugged the USB into a laptop on a rolling cart. A file opened, audio. I clicked play. My father's voice filled the bay, older, gravelly, but steady. Bobby, he said, like he was sitting right there with me. If you're hearing this, it means someone didn't respect what wasn't theirs. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. My throat closed. Aaron stepped back, giving me space. I set things up clean, Dad continued. No tricks, no shouting, just the right way. Do it right, son. Do it calm. And remember, legacy isn't loud. I wiped my eyes with the heel of my hand. For the first time since the funeral, I let myself breathe all the way in. Aaron cleared his throat softly. We'll cooperate fully, Mr. Kincaid, but there may be pushback. I thought of Linda's text, Eric's grin, the wedding deposits already spent. That's okay, I said. My voice was steady. I'm used to hard roads. As I walked back to my truck, my phone buzzed again. Linda, where are you? I looked at the dealership behind me at the car that still belonged to my father and to me. I'm on my way, I typed, and for the first time it wasn't a lie. I didn't go straight home. I drove past Sioux City and pulled into the parking lot of the credit union my father had trusted since before I could shave. Same brick building, same flag out front snapping in the wind. I sat there with the engine running, listening to it idle, thinking about Dad's voice on that recording. Do it calm. Do it right. Inside, the lobby smelled like paper and coffee. A woman named Janice Miller, gray hair, pulled back glasses on a chain, listened without interrupting as I laid everything out. She took the envelope, the trust papers, read them carefully, then looked up. "You're the beneficiary," she said. "Clear as daylight." "My wife sold it anyway," I said. Janice sighed. "That happens more than you'd think. Doesn't make it legal." She explained it in plain English. Probate, trusts, authority. The dealership had paused the transfer because they smelled trouble, but the money, some of it, was already gone. "Be prepared," Janice said. "This won't be quick, and it won't be quiet." I nodded. I wasn't afraid of noise anymore. When I got home, Linda was waiting at the kitchen table. No TV, no phone, just a stack of wedding envelopes and that look she got when she'd decided something. "You went to Omaha," she said. "Yes." "You went behind my back." "You sold my father's car behind mine." Her jaw tightened. "Aaron said there was paperwork, technical nonsense. He said lawyers might call." "They will," I said, "because the sale wasn't legal." Her chair scraped back. "You're threatening me now." "I'm correcting a wrong," I said. "There's a difference." Eric stormed in that evening, red-faced jacket, half-zipped. "What the hell did you do?" he demanded. I didn't raise my voice. I followed the law. "You froze my money," he said. "The venue is calling. The band wants answers." Linda rounded on me. "You did this to punish us." "No," I said. "I did this to honor my father." Eric laughed sharp and ugly. "Honor doesn't pay deposits." "Neither does stealing," I said. He pointed at me. "If this ruins my wedding, I'll sue you." "Get in line," I said. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I sat at the dining table with Dad's old photo album spread out, black and white shots of him in uniform, a younger version of me squinting into the sun beside the car. One photo stopped me cold. Dad stood at the rear of the vehicle, hand resting on the trunk, smiling like he knew something the camera didn't. Important things don't sit out where anyone can grab them. I called Janice the next morning and told her I was ready. Papers went out, notices filed. The dealership sent affidavits. Linda's tone changed from angry to pleading to cold in the space of a week. Eric stopped calling altogether. Then the letter arrived. Woodbury County Courthouse, mandatory hearing. Linda read it twice, then looked up at me with something like fear. "You're really doing this?" "Yes," I said, "I am." The morning of the hearing, I put on a simple jacket, and Dad's watch, the one he wore every day for 30 years. At the courthouse steps, I took a breath and went inside. Linda sat on one bench with Eric and his fiancée, whispering furiously. When she saw me, she looked away. The judge was older, voice calm, patient. Documents were reviewed, questions asked. Linda stumbled over timelines. Eric muttered under his breath. Then Frank stood up, VFW cap in his hands. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. Harry Kincaid was a man of his word, Frank said. That car meant something. He set things straight because that's who he was. The judge nodded, then delivered it plain. The sale is invalid. Funds are to be returned where possible. This court recognizes the trust. Eric exploded. Linda sagged. I didn't smile. I walked out into the cold Iowa air with my hands shaking, not from anger, but from release. The courtroom felt smaller once the judge began reading. Not physically smaller, but tighter, like the walls had leaned in to listen. Linda sat 2 rows ahead of me, hands clenched in her lap. Eric paced behind her bench jaw, working back and forth the heel of his shoe, tapping the tile in a rhythm that said he was losing control. His fiancée stared straight ahead, frozen like she'd realized too late that love doesn't protect you from consequences. The judge adjusted his glasses and spoke in a calm, even voice, the kind men my age trust instinctively. These documents establish a valid trust, he said. The vehicle in question was not marital property, nor was it subject to unilateral sale. Linda's shoulders stiffened. The court finds the sale improper, the judge continued. Funds derived from that sale will be subject to restitution where applicable. Accounts related to the wedding expenses are hereby frozen pending review. Eric let out a sharp laugh that echoed off the wood-paneled walls. You've got to be kidding me, he said loud enough that heads turned. The judge looked up slowly. Young man. Eric threw his hands out. He knew what he was doing. He waited until the money was spent. That is enough, the judge said, his tone firm now. One more outburst and you will be removed. Eric turned on his mother, eyes blazing. You told me it was fine. You said you handled it. Linda stood up halfway, her voice breaking. I was trying to help you. I did what I thought was right. You always do what's right for you, Eric snapped. Now look. The fiancée finally spoke, her voice small. What does this mean for us? No one answered her. The judge cleared his throat again. This court is not here to mediate family disagreements. It is here to correct a legal wrong. Mr. Kincaid, he looked directly at me. You pursued this matter appropriately. I stood when indicated. My knees felt stiff, but my voice held. That car belonged to my father, I said. He trusted that it would be treated with respect. I'm only asking for that trust to be honored. The judge nodded once, so ordered. The gavel came down. The sound was sharp, final, and clean. Chairs scraped as people stood. Conversation started in hushed bursts, then faded as the bailiff opened the door. Eric stormed out first, brushing past me so hard his shoulder clipped mine. He didn't look back. Linda gathered her purse slowly. For a moment she met my eyes. There was anger there. And something else, fear maybe, or the realization that she no longer controlled the story. She turned away without a word. Frank approached me near the aisle, his VFW cap held against his chest. Harry would have approved, he said quietly. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. I tried to keep it clean. You did, he said. That's why it worked. Outside, the cold Iowa air hit my face like a reset. The courthouse steps were dusted with old snow packed down by decades of people walking up hopeful and leaving changed. I stood there alone, hands in my coat pockets, heart still pounding, but steady. The fight was over. What came next was something else entirely. The car came home a week later. I didn't announce it. I didn't tell anyone I was going to pick it up. I drove down to Omaha early in the morning before the sky fully decided what color it wanted to be, and signed the last of the paperwork in a quiet office that smelled like toner and old coffee. Aaron handed me the keys without ceremony. I'm sorry for your loss, he said. Your father was very deliberate. I nodded. That was the word, deliberate. When I slid into the driver's seat, the leather creaked the same way it always had. The dash was clean. The steering wheel worn smooth in the places my father's hands had rested for decades. I didn't start the engine right away. I sat there with my palms flat on my thighs and let the weight of it settle in. Then I turned the key. The engine caught immediately. No hesitation, no drama, just a low, steady rumble. Dependable. I drove home the long way, past grain elevators and closed diners and fields that stretched out like open palms. With every mile, something inside me eased, not because I'd won, but because something that had been taken was finally where it belonged. When I pulled into the driveway, the garage didn't feel hollow anymore. The empty rectangle on the concrete disappeared beneath familiar tires. I shut the door behind me and stood there for a minute, listening to the engine tick as it cooled, breathing in oil and dust and memory. Linda didn't come out to greet me. By then her things were already half gone, boxes stacked neatly by the door. Closet space cleared out with surgical precision. We didn't fight about it. There wasn't anything left to say that would make either of us better people. Some endings don't need shouting. A few days later, I drove the car to the VFW for Memorial Day. The flag was already up, snapping hard in the wind. Men my age and older stood around in folding chairs, hands in pockets, talking about weather and aches and grandkids. When I parked, conversation slowed. A couple of them walked over. One ran his hand lightly over the hood. Another nodded once, slow and approving. Harry's car, someone said. Yes, sir, I answered. They didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. We stood there together in the sun, and for the first time since the funeral, I felt like I'd done right by him. That afternoon, I drove out to the cemetery. I brought a rag and wiped the headstone clean, brushing away the grit that always seemed to collect in the letters. I handled it, I said aloud, feeling a little foolish and not caring. Clean, like you said. The wind moved through the trees. Somewhere behind me, a door slammed on a passing truck. Life continuing. Months went by. The wedding happened, eventually smaller, quieter, paid for in a way that didn't involve stealing from the dead. I wasn't invited. I didn't expect to be. One evening, my phone rang while I was sitting on the porch watching the light fade over the fields. Eric's name came up on the screen. I let it ring once, then I answered. I don't want money, he said quickly, like he'd rehearsed it. I wanted to hear your voice. I waited. He swallowed. Can you tell me about my grandfather sometime, about the Navy, about the car? I looked out at the driveway at the blue paint catching the last of the sun. Yeah, I said, I can do that. When the call ended, I stayed where I was, hands resting on my knees, thinking about how strange legacy really is. It isn't what you leave behind in dollars or things. It's the lines you draw, the rules you refuse to bend, the quiet decisions that say this matters. I didn't ruin a wedding. I didn't get revenge. I honored a promise. If this story made you think of someone who taught you the difference between what's easy and what's right, take a moment to remember them. And if you believe stories like this still matter, stories about standing firm without losing yourself, share it with someone who might need it and stay with us for the next one.